Behind the net, centers, flat, finds to Clark, shot, oh, rebound, scores! Scores the game winner at 12 minutes and 1 second of Sunday.
TheFourthPeriod.com presents the O&B Puckcast, episode number 63. I'm your host, Isaiah, and I come to you on a busy news night, but somewhat of a somber note, as the Flyers have encountered a lot of adversity, and we're going to talk about it. There's some breaking news. We'll talk about that as well. We're going to have Dennis Bernstein on from TheFourthPeriod.com, and the Hot Stove, presented by TFP on Sirius XM NHL Radio. So he'll deal with a lot of issues around the league, the trade today. Taylor Hall gets traded. But, gents, we got to open up talking about Oskar Lindblom. Let's just do the introductions and go from there. My partner, Chef B, how are you, man?
Somber. Like you said, somber. It hits close to home. I'm sure everybody out there has somebody that has been touched by some form of cancer anymore, and my family is no exception either. So prayers to Oskar.
Yep. From Brotherly Pod and Puck and from National Pod and Puck, Dan, a Flyer fan. Dan, how are you?
I'm doing good, all things considered. Obviously, very sad news about Lindblom coming out. Sucks, he's 23 years old. He's my age, for Christ's sake. And, it's hard to see that, from a hockey perspective and just a human perspective as well. From all accounts, he's one of the nicest guys on the team. And, for something like this to happen to him, it's tragic. Yeah,
absolutely. And from the FourthPeriod.com, our own Anthony DeMarco. How are you, Anthony?
Not too bad. Yeah, really tough news with Oskar Lindblom coming out. It just kind of rears its ugly head and brings us all down to earth and brings us back to reality that cancer, doesn't care how old you are, what condition you keep your body in. If you're a banker, if you're a sports athlete, it can come at you in any way. And, like Chef mentioned, I'm sure we've all been touched by cancer and affected by it in some form or fashion over the course of our lives. And it's close to home in this instance.
Yeah, absolutely. Oskar Lindblom, this week, I guess actually over the weekend, it was announced that he had something called Ewing's sarcoma, a form of bone cancer. It can be aggressive, but if caught early, the 5-year survival rates are anywhere between 70 to 80%. Again, it's different sourcing on that, and it's critical, like any cancer, but particularly this one, that they catch it early. And we just don't have information. So all we can do is pass along our good wishes to Oskar Lindblom. And it's just a terrible shame for any 23-year-old man, let alone a hockey player, someone whose humility and kindness seems to radiate for someone who is, I guess, unassuming, like Oskar seems to be, and by all indications is. And the fact that he was having a breakout year makes it that much more difficult. He's not going to be with the Flyers playing for the rest of the year, and we can only hope that, like Mark Herzlich, who was with the New York Giants, who also had the same type of cancer, who overcame it and had a career with the New York Giants, that he can make a similar comeback. And he'll be the same old Oskar, maybe at some point next season if we cross our fingers. But we don't know. We have to wait to see what the Flyers announce through their official channels, and we'll go from there. I have a form of cancer that's non-staged, and I have to get it checked every year. And yeah, it's all scary, and it just makes you thankful. And like you guys are saying, it grounds you and makes you realize what's important, in your everyday life as we battle on Twitter, life and death. And of course, even arising from this is the phenomenon of seeing several Twitter spats that have erupted even in the wake of this. So it gets kind of crazy. Anybody else with some other thoughts before we move on?
No, I think Anthony and I both said our piece yesterday on Brotherly Pod. So if anybody wants to hear our thoughts on this, we talked about it over there.
Yeah. You don't want to wallow in this, and the Flyers are playing like a team that is kind of wallowing, but it's not just what's going on with Oskar, although that certainly casts the largest pall. If you review where we were over the last several games, the Flyers since our last show have gone 2-4, and Dan, you have a stats pack that will sum up everything for our listeners.
Well, the Flyers are 17-11-5 on the season for 39 points, sit 5th in the Metro, 6th in the Eastern Conference. They are tied with Buffalo and 3 points ahead of the Rangers, Canadiens, and Leafs for the last playoff spot. They are 19th in goals for, 10th in goals against. Their power play is ranked 17th at 18.2%, and their penalty kill is 9th at 83.5%.
Yeah, thank you for that, Dan. Just a bit of explanation. Last show we talked about something, the ROW column, and thanks to one of our listeners, Franco 65, but he brought it to our attention that they changed the rules, and it's really the overtime wins are now moved to a secondary or a tertiary tiebreaker. And you have to look at something called the RW column, which has replaced the ROW column. Regulation wins now, due to the rule change, take precedent as your first tiebreaker. And then, if you're still tied with points, regulation wins, and then you look at the overtime wins. So why is that relevant? Because the Flyers, even though they have 39 points, and, Dan, you were saying they are 5th in the Metro, 6th in the conference, hanging onto a playoff spot. There are several teams below them, points-wise, that have more regulation wins. It's a concern going forward, because you have to know that both the Tampa and Toronto, who they're tied with, are likely to have second halves that are better than what we've seen so far. So, but gents, the Flyers roll out a lineup that, in my estimation, had half of the forwards that were below NHL quality in yesterday's game against the Winnipeg Jets. And we'll get to Joel Farabee right after that. But just, that's it. I mean, Raffles out, Lawton's out, Pitlick is out, along with Oskar Lindblom. And I'm probably losing track of people.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you count Nolan Patrick, they're basically missing 6 of their starting 12 forwards at the NHL level. And look, it was no secret that even when the Flyers were fully healthy, minus Nolan Patrick, of course, and winning, that the Flyers were in need of offensive help. I think the cat's out of the bag that Morgan Frost should not be in the NHL. Joel Farabee, he's probably an NHL player at this juncture, but, the case could be made that he needs more AHL time. Carson Twarynski, this is his 3rd kick at the can at the NHL level. It doesn't seem like he'll be anything much more than a tweener. Vorobiev has had his flashes of being all right. David Cauchet has done okay. Nico Kubel, and it just reared its ugly head last night in the sense that the Flyers are not a team with a lot of forward depth, and they don't have the superstars capable of carrying a team that is going through this rash of injuries. We've seen it in Boston and Pittsburgh where they go through a rash of injuries like such, but they have the talent to carry the AHL call-ups. The Flyers don't have that. I know Van Riemsdyk has 5 or 6 points in the last number of games, and I've seen people throw out all these analytics and these fancy stats saying that him and Jakub Voracek are carrying their weight. Alex Appleyard said that Van Riemsdyk, Voracek, and Hayes and Giroux have been scoring at first-line level rate at 5-on-5. I don't see it. Maybe analytically that's the case, but when I look at this team, it's a very shallow pool of offensive tools up front, with the incapability of subsequenting the injuries that are at hand right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to segment out the power play and say, listen, if they were just producing on the power play like they usually do, everything would be better and the scoring rates would improve. But more than 1/3 of the way through the season, that's just not happening. And at some point, reality has to kick in. And if it does, it may come at a time when it's too late. Chef?
Yeah, I mean, at some point, I've seen tidbits out here and there that is there, Anthony suggested that the offense just isn't there right now to begin with before the injuries. Now, after the injuries, is there something along the line where now you're going to – is Fletcher forced to have to go outside the organization now? I mean, I want to correct them a little bit. It wasn't the Flyers that lost on yesterday. It was the Phantoms, it seemed like, because you could have made an argument that was more Phantoms on the roster than the Flyers. To be sarcastic about it. But, yeah, I mean – I think there's a move that's going to have to be done somewhere along the line, because it doesn't look like this is going to clear up any sooner than later.
No, and we got to talk about, Travis Konecny getting concussed. That was a big deal because that's, their leading goal scorer. Well, it was tied with Oskar. He was their leading point getter. So, I mean, we don't have an update. Did we get a further update on TK?
Last I heard he was skating when they were on the road trip, but I haven't heard anything about his availability for tomorrow yet.
Yeah. Dan, let's talk about Joel Farabee. In my opinion, yesterday, that came at 2-1, didn't it?
Yes, it was before the flurry.
Right. The Flyers survived the storm of, the early, storm, we'll call it, from Winnipeg after losing to the Wild 4-1 and looking just kind of overwhelmed, losing Scott Lawton to a groin pull. Pitlick has a concussion. They call up Nick Aube-Kubel, Carson Twarynski, and get into Winnipeg. So it's 2-1. The Flyers are getting back into it. And Joel Farabee has a couple scoring chances. He's had several over the last couple weeks. He just can't convert. In 27 games, there's 3 goals, 11 points. And this might be the first time in his career that he's struggled to this level. And I believe, Dan, that he kind of took that frustration out on Matthew Perreault, hit him late. I think probably concussed him. I think, did Perreault come back to that game?
He's out with an injury, but it's not disclosed what it is.
Yeah. And he had kind of like that malice of forethought. He gets 3 games. Okay, I get a suspension, even for a first-time offender, but I didn't think that was 3 games worthy when you think of Borieski and the hit on Konecny, and with that kind of reputation and all the things that we've seen over the last several weeks. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, Borowecki has concussed 2 people in the last 8 days, one being Konecny and the other one was Sonny Milano over the weekend in Columbus. And, you can make arguments that both of those hits weren't anything, malicious or intent. And quite frankly, I don't think this was either. I think Farabee is frustrated. He came in like a house of fire when he first got here and was playing real well, went on a long cold streak in the last 5-6 games or so. He's been trying. He's definitely got some great passing ability. He's been trying to convert, and it just really hasn't been happening. So maybe it was some frustration. Obviously, it's been a frustrating couple days for the team as a whole, and the major penalty last night cost the Flyers the game. The Jets just turned it on during the power play and ran right over him. But it's first-time offender, 3 games. it's dumb, but hey, it's the NHL Department of Player Safety, who doesn't exactly have a great track record of making the right decisions all the time. So I'm shocked but not surprised, I guess would be the phrase for this one. And the Flyers just have 3 more games they have to miss some people on. And, Farabee seemed like he was on the breakout of something here, maybe trying to get his game back on. But I guess he's going to have to wait 3 more games before he can get back on the horse.
Yeah, well, that's 3 games to cool his jets, get some perspective. Anthony, I think it was a suspendable hit because, like I said, I think he intentionally just took out frustration on a player and injured somebody. But I think 1 game would have sufficed. Your opinion?
Yeah, the hit was late, and it was on an unsuspecting player. The puck had gone for at least a second. I think that's what the Department of Player Safety said. A full second had gone by. I was surprised with how big the number was, because if Perreault has the puck, that's a clean hit every day of the week. And, there was no head contact, but I think the severity of the injury of Perreault had to do with it. I still maintain that Borowiecki's hit wasn't dirty and didn't deserve a suspension. I thought this one did, but I think this was excessive for a first-time offense. But I think if I were to just look at this and speculate, when the Department of Player Safety looked at it, they probably thought that it was of malicious intent. And I guess that's one thing that I could concur with them on, that Farabee was just hitting to hurt in this instance.
I'd have to concur with that. Chef, you want to weigh in for the final verdict?
Yeah, it caused me to be confused because he didn't leave his feet. Like Andy said, if he has the puck, it's a legal hit. He didn't leave his feet. He hit him center mass. I can understand it being a penalty. I can understand it being a match penalty. But you already took him out of the game, so 1 game would have been essentially fair enough to me, I think. I agree that it really is excessive at 3. So, but compared to what, like Dan said, what they've done over the last year, hell, what they've done this season already is so confusing. So you just don't know what to expect anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so crazy. I think back, our last show was called Flyers, Peaches, and Cream. We had Russ Cohen on, and he warned us of a couple things. When young guys like Farabee and Frost don't score, how are they going to feel about that? And I think we're seeing some of that in addition to the pressure as the bodies drop out for one reason or another. I think these next several weeks are going to make or break the Flyers. But there's some limitations that we're going to talk about with our buddy Dennis Bernstein. Just to recap, gents, the Flyers started out, since our last show, beating the Leafs 6-1. A really strong effort against a team that, was revitalized under Sheldon Keefe. It was a lot closer game than 6-1. Of course, the Flyers exploded for, 3 or 4 late goals. And
3 goals in the last 2 minutes and 8 seconds, I believe it was.
It's such a memory. So much has happened since then. Then the Coyotes came in. Big news about them today. They acquired Taylor Hall. We'll get to more of that with DB, but they just smothered the Flyers 3-1, and that was it was a very well played game. But Arizona really played a excellent road game, and then of course the game we referred to earlier where TK got hit, and but the Flyers, even though they let the Senators get underneath their skin a little bit, pulled out a 4-3 victory, a real chippy game. What is the pronunciation? I'm going to go with Anthony. Is it Borowiecki? Because I've heard Borowiecki or...
I think it's Borowiecki. I've heard some variations with the V in there. So I think it's, if I had to guess, up here in Canada, I think the consensus is Borowiecki.
Okay. Well, that's the jerk that hit TK. And let's pawn it off on somebody else.
Senators.
Yeah, exactly. So after that, and then we find out Oskar is not available for, we did not know why. Myers had back spasms, which have since have gone away sufficiently that he can play. The Flyers lose 3-1 to Colorado, especially early in the game. There was like a shooting gallery, like the Panther game from a couple weeks ago. Then the Flyers got their legs at altitude and made a game of it. But for the most part, the Abs were too much. I know we went back and forth on that. Maybe I overstated that. But Colorado is a Stanley Cup final team. I believe they're a Stanley Cup final contender, I should say. So, and then Chef, the Flyers lose to the Wild. And that's where they lost Lawton and Pitlick before we get to the Winnipeg game we just spoke about. That also was a very frustrating game.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like anything's going their way, and you could just I don't want to go back to last year, but I looked at the players, the way they're skating. For a little bit there, I thought they like shoulders down again. Oh my God, here we go. We can't catch a break, and maybe they can't. But so something's got to change for them. They got to search within themselves to try to get themselves back into these games coming up, because it's not going to get any easier.
Well, that was a tough one, because that's the first game I think they played after finding out about Oskar Lindblom. So they just had to buck up. It's a very young team. Yeah, I think most of the fan base, I'll say. And Dan, you could give us your opinion. I think that the fans are understanding. They're willing to give the Flyers a little leeway through this bumpy time, but they can't get stuck in a gully, because this whole season could go down the tubes before you know it.
Yeah, and they're still very much in the thick of things. From a playoff perspective,
right.
We're in the middle of the season. We're a couple weeks away from the midpoint of the season, and they're still very much in the playoff hunt, and they can't just give up. I'm sure everybody just wants to forfeit the season and try again later, but they're still very much in the thick of things here, and they can't give up. There's obviously the injuries and the losses of players are going to be hard, but this is a team that just has to keep fighting, and they came out of the gate so strong. And this team, 2 weeks ago, this team looked like they were on the verge of something great, and now all of a sudden it's like everything has caught up to them, and it's not looking good. But hopefully they can keep going here and have a strong midpoint of the season and keep going until the playoffs come around.
Yeah. Now, Chef, any thoughts?
No, I was just thinking, if you look back at how they started the season, overseas, and coming back here and playing on 5 different countries, 3 different continents, and you go into stuff where all the different adversities that this team is facing. If they happen to make the playoffs, and if they keep in there, it's going to be a very, very heart-tugging story of how this season turns out. Either way, it should be interesting. I was just thinking about all that now, that this could be a very great story, hopefully, the way it turns out.
Yeah, I mean, I lived through the Pelle Lindbergh saga. I remember Yannick Dupre, and in '99 we lost Dmitry Trotishny in a boat accident. He was a promising young two-way defenseman who had played for the Flyers in the 98 season, I believe. 98-99 season, perhaps, I think it was. So the Flyers have seen their share of tragic circumstances from a variety of different players, unfortunately. So, well, we're going to be joined by DB momentarily, but just wanted to mention there is a roster freeze, a trade freeze, from the 19th to the 27th, so that's this Thursday the 19th until Friday the 27th. So I don't think there's going to be a ton of activity, but we're going to talk to DB about what's possible after that time, and I guess we'll mention about what the Flyers are going to do.
Hello from Los Angeles.
Yes, and we have on the line joining us on the O&B Puckcast from the fourthperiod.com, Kings of the Podcast, and of course Hot Stove on TFP on the Sirius XM Radio NHL. It is the man we call DB, Dennis Bernstein. How are you, man?
Yeah, Isaiah, Daniel, great to be with you. I'm doing great tonight. And breaking news podcast for you guys. It's finally it's come. The number one fish in the free agency pool is swam to the desert.
Yeah. Tell us all about it.
Well, they were the front runners, number one, the Coyotes. I think more quantity than quality. I think the kid defenseman is pretty good, but no frontline players. Now, he was a rental. I think the big picture, guys, is Arizona needed to make another move. Quality goaltending, really good defensively. And I think it's just a function of how crappy the Pacific Division is this season. And that has a lot to do with it, because you have a team like Edmonton. When you watch them some nights, they look anything but a division leader. Certainly, I think Calgary and Vegas are going to have some more traction here. Calgary, since Peters left, has been on fire. Vegas, look at them up and down the lineup. They're probably the most complete team in the division. But I think John Chaika and Rick Tocchet see an opportunity here to win a division, maybe get a 2-seed, and then you take your chances in the playoffs. So good move for them. A move the Devils have to make, guys. You know, I know this is a Flyers podcast, but you got to feel a little bit for the Devils, because every move they've made here in the postseason last year has gone wrong, right? The PK Subban trade hasn't really worked, right? Hasn't got a point in 20 games. Taylor Hall didn't want to sign there, and fourth period. We go back to June, we told people, and I'm not the one to say I told you so, but we told you so. Taylor just wasn't interested in going long-term in New Jersey. I think it was part of the area. Part of the team didn't have any traction, but they brought in Wayne Simmons. That hasn't worked out. Jack Hughes isn't, Connor McDavid just yet. So there's a lot of reasons to make the trade, and one they had to make. They couldn't re-sign him. And now the question with Arizona is, they're up against the cap. They had to have the Devils retain. Do you really want to give Taylor Hall $10 or $11 million in Arizona next season? So I think it's a good move for both sides. They were clearly the front runners. I think what happened at the last couple of days, guys, is that Shiro, I think they were always the front runner, but then he got some. It was a question of, would he get future help, which is basically what this trade is, future help for the Devils, or did he want more immediacy, and probably would have got it from maybe a Florida or a St. Louis. So it's a move that had to be made. It had to be made now. We certainly think it was going to be before the trade deadline. And I really can't fault both sides. I think it can work out for both teams. I'm not sure that Taylor Hall is going to put Arizona over, and that's why you don't see, one of the younger defensemen like the Swedish kid that they have in the system not going back in a trade. So I think it's going to work for both teams. And New Jersey just had to cut bait, and they got to figure a different way to build this team going into next season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the fact that he's a pending UFA, you're not going to get a guy like Victor Soderstrom.
Right, exactly.
That's the money prospect. Merkley is kind of like a notch below that. Good player, yes. Could be a top 4 defenseman in the league. But, you're not going to touch the higher level prospect with someone who probably is not going to sign once they hit the market. You guys talked about on your Hot Stove show a lot this past weekend.
Yeah, and look, to be honest with you, I think that, guys like us, all of us, we kind of root for a big-time trade deadline day. But when you look at the remaining UFAs, and I'm looking at them right now, I'll give you the 4 top guys. And it's going to cringe, and it makes for probably a bad February 24th. J.G. Pajot in Ottawa, obviously will go. Tyler Toffoli here in Los Angeles. Right, Chris Kreider in New York. And Sammy Vatanen in New Jersey. Like that's not something to make a big trade deadline day about. So if there are going to be trades, guys, it's going to be more players with term. These are the unrestricted free agents, not just everybody that's eligible, because there could be other trades being moved. But from the rental market, it's not a good rental market, because you look at the other names. Dadanoff is not leaving Florida, right? I assume they're going to stay in contention. Nicky Backstrom's not leaving Washington. Petrolangelo certainly not leaving St. Louis. Mike Hoffman, same thing. Krug's not leaving Boston. So it could be a very, very weak rental market. And based on these names, I think they are. I think in Los Angeles, you look at a guy like Toffoli, I think they're hoping at this point for a conditional third. So if they're going to be big moves, it's probably going to be players with term here. But I'm already ready for a disappointing trade deadline, to be honest with you. But it doesn't mean that there's, look, in the West, look, guys, here's the thing. I've said this for weeks now. There's 3 elite teams to me: Boston, Washington, and St. Louis. Maybe the Islanders, because they still confound me. They still don't have that top-level talent, but they're great defensively, great system. The goaltending's holding up. And then you have a bunch of teams who are just trying to find their way. Like, look at Tampa. I mean, look at Nashville, right? I mean, they're under 500, these teams, and teams that are clearly talented teams. So I think while there might be activity, the GM's going to have to be creative at the trade deadline. And to be frank, NHL GMs aren't very creative. There's no three-way deals. There's not a lot of, it's usually 1 for 1 or 1 for 2 or a couple of rentals. So I'm not optimistic that we're going to have a big trade deadline here.
No, I don't see it. Yeah, I might want to put Colorado in that elite category.
Yes, I would think that I agree. I think they're healthy. Maybe make a trade for maybe another defenseman at the deadline. Maybe that. So, but I agree with you. I would put Colorado in that mix of now 5 if you want to include the Islanders.
Yeah, and we were talking about earlier because I screwed this up. They switch from emphasis on the ROW tiebreaker to this year the RW.
Yeah,
and Colorado's got all second in the league with 18 RWs, regulation wins. That's a nice thing to have in your pocket.
They're a scary team. If they're all healthy, they're a scary team, and they're a team that could win. Look, if you wanted to trade for another forward, not that they would need it. I mean, they've got if you wanted to wing, I know they just signed to extension, but if you wanted to swing Sammy Girard for another winger, you could do that because you got Byron coming next season. So I just think that this team, and guys, remember 2 years ago when everybody wanted to hang Joe Sakic from the rafters because he was the worst GM in the league?
Right.
You see how the warm turns? So you have one big trade or one big draft, and you could easily turn things around in this league. I think that's what you have to keep in mind. And the teams like here in Los Angeles, people are ripping Rob Blake because of the Kovalchuk thing. You know what? It doesn't have anything to do with their rebuild. They took a risk on a UFA. It didn't work. Now, give me the GM who's taken a risk on a UFA that's been perfect with respect to his shooting percentage. It just doesn't happen. It doesn't affect their cap space. It doesn't affect their ability to bring players forward at this point in time. It's one roster spot, and they'll take a cap hit of $6 million a year. But if you look at cap friendly, they're not making big moves, right? Like if it was me, look, I would have went for Panarin. I would have drove him around, Hermosa Beach and Manhattan Beach when it was 75 degrees in January, in June, and say, hey, look, here's, maybe you want to play here. So that would have been play I move. Now, the flip side of that is where people are. Now, I read today, they got all this dead cap space from 3 players, 2 to 3 players. Richards and Phaneuf weren't even here, and they made the trade. Remember, Phaneuf came here to get rid of the Gaborik contract. So let's be fair to Rob Blake. Rob Blake will be judged on his 4 drafts, the 17, 18, 19, and 20 draft. Not because he screwed up one. And it was a bad move. It was a gamble. Player hadn't been in the league for 5 years. Came back, wasn't a fit, didn't work out with. Look, he played decently for John Stevens, but didn't work with Desjardins. It wasn't working with Tom McClung. They cut their losses. They'll take a cap hit for next season, but they'll move on. This is not the judgment day for Rob Blake's tenure in Los Angeles. We'll find that out in the next 2 seasons if the kids that they have, and they have a ton of them. Look, guys, they've got 9 players that are eligible for the World Juniors, right? That's I think the most they've ever had before was 5. So there are players in the pipeline. So let's just hold off looking to hang Rob Blake or we hung Joe Sakic. Let's see how this plays out in Los Angeles.
No, absolutely. And you think about much like Ron Hextall, whatever he didn't do very well toward the very end. He had to disentangle the Flyers from the contracts. It was such a mess. And Rob Blake is going through a very similar process. What the best news is in L.A.? Gabe Velarde's playing again, right?
Look, he's a game changer, to be honest with you guys. If you could, because they have Beyond Foot, they have Semi Fagemo, Arnie Kaliev scores a goal every night, right? So they have Turcotte. But if you could layer Velarde on top of those prospects and another draft, because they're not going to be good, they're going to be a dangerous team. But yeah, the best news is Velarde, and he's playing well, guys. He's producing, he's scoring, he's putting points on the board. That's something that they've been waiting for a long time, at least for a couple of seasons. So if you can layer him on top of the prospects they already have, a season or 2 from now, they're going to be back in contention.
Yeah, Anthony.
Hey, Davey, what's going on?
Hey, Ed, what's going on, bud?
Not too much. Living the dream. So, look, there's a lot of coaching, dismissals going around. You brought up Nashville lately. I wonder about Peter Laviolette's security. I wrote that piece before we led into this season I was wondering, like, is his time coming up? He's only the second coach in franchise history. He's been there, I think, since 2014-15. Obviously it would be for hockey-related reasons for his dismissal. How long do you think his leash is, and do you think it could be sooner rather than later?
I think he gets a break because the conference isn't that good, right? So they're, I guess, 7 points out of a playoff spot. I think that if we get to, I give them another month. Like, if they're still here, look, they're one. Now, they've had a couple games in hand, right? So they're behind San Jose, Vancouver. They've only played 31 games, right? So they're, let's see, 7 points behind Calgary, but 4 games in hand. So I don't think it's imminent, but I didn't think that Pete DeBoer was imminent because he didn't play goal and he got whacked in San Jose, right? So I think that, but to be fair and to be totally transparent here, they are 3 games under 500. And this team should never be 3 games under 500, right? They shouldn't be battling Anaheim or San Jose at this point in time for a playoff spot. So, yeah, could he be – is there a coaching watch? Yeah. Is he on the hot seat? Sure. But you know what? So's John Cooper in Tampa. They shouldn't be where they are either, and they have games in hand too. So I think they give them at least another month. If we get into, like, the late January and they're still floundering here, I think you got to look at an option. But, nothing surprises me. The board thing took me like – look, I know they were underachieving. I know that Doug Wilson really, is a Teflon guy in San Jose. That kind of surprised me because I know Pete. I know he's a really good coach, and they couldn't put it on him because when you watch that goaltending every night, you know why they're losing, right? It's not like that, Anth. So they got to start winning. Here's the thing, guys. Like, there's a coach making $6 million a year that's unemployed. You know why? His team was losing. Right, exactly. So that's it. You got to win games. It's as simple as that. You got to win games, and there's pressure. And, of course, what would they say in Nashville? Pete's been there too long. The message is no longer resonating. So he's got to win games. Like DeBoer had to win games. Like Babcock had to win games. You got to win games in this league. So if he doesn't win games in the next month, could it be gone? Yeah, absolutely, because GMs have no patience in this league.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I mean, there's so many situations. I mean, you look at what happened with Montgomery in Dallas. And then the fallout from the Babcock and Peters. The coach is going to have to get a union. What's happening?
Nah, it's, you know what? When you're a coach or a manager, you're hard to be fired. So I think when these guys sign up for it, and they're all getting paid, right? They all have contracts. So Babs is going to, somebody's going to get the Seattle job. So a union. I'm not sure. Like, do the players really need a union? They're all making millions of dollars a year, to be frank with you guys. So, I mean, do they really need protection? So, I just think it comes to the territory. I think when you sign on to coach a team in any professional sport, there's pressure to win, right? And not only that, but these teams are giving good players. Like, look, Babcock, the expectation was we gave Marner money. We gave Austin money. We gave everybody money, right? We signed John Tavares. You should win. And the way that team played and backed up on him, like, that was on him. Yeah. Because I will tell you that there was a lot of relief in the locker room when that guy left town, right? So I think it's just not like they don't need a union. I think it just comes with the territory. It's like you don't have 5 years to get. I mean, GM might have 5 years to rebuild a team. A coach doesn't have 5 years, And the one shocking thing is, guys, if you want to talk about having a union, with all these firing, Jeff Blashill still has a job. With a team with a minus 60 goal differential tonight, he still has a job. So it depends on the organization. It depends on the vision. It depends on a lot of things. But I just think that you don't have the protection. Like, look, I really like John Hines. I thought he was a really good coach. I think he did great things there. But you know what? 115 goals against, minus 38 goal differential. You watch the team lose night in, night out, and it's expectations, right? So in Detroit, coming into the season, there were no expectations. So maybe that's why Jeff Hessel has his job, whereas opposed to New Jersey, where they had very high expectations, and they're sitting, way out of the race. I think that's what cost these coaches their jobs. But I think in talking to enough coaches, guys, they know what they sign up for. So I don't think they need any protection of a union. Not that would matter anyway.
Right, yeah. No, I mean, it's just, I think the Montgomery one is the one that puzzles, but, we're told that when details ever do emerge that we'll understand. But, hey, DB, what's going on in Anaheim? Have they gone, to the mindset of full rebuild just yet? Because they have some attractive players, and maybe they could turn this thing around quicker than people think.
I don't think so, but because I look at their offense, and I think they're like last in offense. They just, here's the thing. Prospects, I love prospects. I'd rather have rings, right? So when you have the Comtois and you have the Sam Steeles and the Troy Terrys and stuff like that, and you bring them up with all this fanfare, and they haven't been scoring, like, so now you're relying on Silverberg and Henrique to carry the load. That's not good enough. So, it's a very cautionary tale with respect to Anaheim. Do I think that they could make some moves at the deadline to prop them up and move up? Nah, you know what? They're already, 8 points adrift of a playoff spot. I'm not leveraging any of those kids to bring in proven talent, right? And again, it's a transition. Corey Perry left town. Ryan Kessler can't play anymore. Ryan Getzlaff's playing well, but he's playing with Andre Kasha and, some other, Derek Grant's one of the best players this season. So I think that this is a rebuild. I think that if they could move out some players, if they could get something for Silverberg or Henrique, I got to check his no trade situation. I would be tempted to move more veterans out and clear the path. But like I said, it's tough when you look at these kids' numbers and they've been getting chances and they're just not finishing. You have to have patience. I don't think that they're a contender this year. I don't think that they're going to go on a big run. The goaltending's been solid. John Gibson. Yeah. Can you depend on him all season? Is he going to be able to play 60 games or 55 games that you need? That tandem's good. It's just that it's like Los Angeles. There's just not enough good players. The players that may be good in the season for two right now are just not delivering. So I don't think that they're going to crawl back in the race. I would be shocked if they did. So, at trade deadline time, if somebody wants to call about the players that I mentioned, the Silverbergs or the Henriques, if Bob Murray, I'd have to have a long conversation about those players to try to make this team better, because they do need a little bit better of a pipeline, because the kids that were here are supposed to bring them into the next generation of Ducks are here now. They're not delivering yet. You have to have a little bit more patience. I'm not saying these players are busts, but that's how I would look at Anaheim at this point in time. Probably a little better off than Los Angeles, but not too much, to be honest with you.
Yeah, they have some young guys that are capable of producing, like Andre Kasha and Ricard Raquel, who I really like. But you got Silverberg, who's 29, and he's booked at 5.25 through 23-24, and that definitely would seem to be a contract they might want to move on from. And he has a 12-team no-trade list, and Henrique, the aforementioned one, has a 10-team no-trade list, so I look for them to be active like you do.
Yeah, I think that those two guys, and Silverberg's a really good two-way player. He's great on the shootout, as people know. Responsible in his own end, a 200-foot player who could definitely help a contender. It's just a matter if you want to swallow that term of a contract. And I think these days, I think that people get scored off more and more by the longer terms of the commitments to these teams. Now, the TV contract's going to click in, and I think if you saw, I think it was the Wall Street Journal or the Sports Business Daily talking about $600 million valuation for a new TV contract. That will help the salary cap go up. So, the more aggressive GMs might want to go after that. But, yeah, I think Anaheim's clearly going to be a seller. And like I said, one of the two veterans could help this team get a couple of assets. I think it'd be a smart move for Bob Murray once we get to February 24th.
Yeah, absolutely. Anthony?
So, DB, you kind of already touched on Babcock and, the fallout from there. They at least have kind of been win one, lose one under Keefe. And then you look across the country in Canada, and the Flames have been riding high since the Bill Peters dismissal, obviously for different reasons. Him on the more, racial front, although it could be argued it could have been performance-based. So I've always been kind of critical of Brad Treliving and how he's managed. And kind of ditto for Kyle Dubas. How much of the early season struggles for the Flames and the Leafs lie at the feet of the respective GMs?
I think more so for Dubas than for Treliving, because I think structurally Calgary's a better team. They're better set up and they were division winner last year. I just think that they had really slow starts. Guys, Johnny Gaudreau playing on the third line some nights in Calgary. I mean, that's on the players, right? And that's on the coach. And again, I don't think anybody was upset that Bill Peters left town for whatever circumstances they were. So I've said this a million times. Toronto's not built to win in the playoffs, right? They know one way. They know down the ice. They're not responsible enough on the defensive end. They don't have good enough players on the defensive end. And I love Jake Muzzin, and he was great here, and he won 2 cups in Los Angeles. He's the best defenseman. That's not getting you through in the division or in the conference. that might win you around. And again, depending where they finish, are they going to play? They could want to play in Tampa Bay in the first round because I assume they'll get away from Boston. That's the good news in Toronto. The bad news is you're probably going to play Tampa Bay, which is not going to get you through. So I think it's definitely on Carl Dubas. Look, I wouldn't have given Nylander that money. I'm not sure about Mitchell Marner, right? I mean, there's a lot of money up front. It's just the construction of this roster is not not wins. They're not tough enough. They're not big enough. They're not, and the mindset isn't there. So if Sheldon Keefe can knock some sense into these players' head that you got to play the other end of the ice and not just go down offensively and try to score goals. Until that happens, and I don't think it's going to happen with these group of players. Like they're going to make the playoffs and they're going to get eliminated in the first round. So more so there, I think Calgary's got a better chance because of what I mentioned before, guys, is that the conference isn't that good. Right? And they can avoid, St. Louis or Colorado in the first round, which they will. They'll probably get through to a round or two, right? So it's just with Calgary, I'd never liked them last season. I think, and it's going to be tough to say, but I think they lack heart. I think that they're one of those teams that came in first, got punched in the nose in the first round. Granted, Colorado's not really a typical wild card team. Got punched in the nose, and they didn't respond. Right now, so maybe with Lucic and Alana, maybe it helped them a little bit in the postseason.
Yeah.
But I would think that when I look at those two teams, I just think structurally the roster is set up better for Calgary than Toronto. I just think they went all in, paid a lot of guys a lot of money because it's Toronto and they're the Yankees of the NHL, and they thought they could get away with it. I don't like the construction of it. So again, if they go out in one round or if they miss the playoffs, heaven forbid, in Toronto, somebody's going to have to swing for that. I assume would be Carl Dubas.
Yeah, DB, there's a couple players out there that everybody kind of knows are on the block, and I'm wondering if there's a match in Buffalo where Bogosian wants out, and Pittsburgh where Alex Galchenyuk is on the block apparently. Yeah. Maybe those are two undesirable players for their respective teams that might want to switch locations. Okay, so you're the GM and you're trading for Alex Galchenyuk right now? He can't score with either Sid or Gino as a center? Good luck. I mean, look, they took a risk on the guy. He's got talent. He's clearly – and look, he scored 18 or 19 goals in this league. It's just – 30 goals.
I think his approach to the game has changed, and I think it's a mental more than physical situation. I don't think he's injured. And so I don't know the team that want to take a risk on that. I think they're stuck with him. They're going to hold their nose. He's going to play out his contract, and then – who knows where he winds up after this? I mean, he's a guy like Tyler Toffoli where he's making 4.6, 4.5, and Tyler's finally got the signal that he's in a contract here and he's starting to produce. But yeah, I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't know how you could you'd really have to take a flyer on Galchenyuk. You'd have to want to, if you're an acquiring team, you'd say, look, you got to retain 50% of the contract. I don't think Jimmy Rufford's willing to do that. I just think that they hope that maybe once the postseason comes around, that he can produce and start getting going. Bogosian, just because you ask for a trade doesn't mean you're going to get a trade. Now, the good thing about Buffalo is they've got surplus, right? They've got Bogosian, they've got Scandella. If they want to go big and trade Ristolainen, which has been talked about, I think since I've been 10 years old, you might want to do that so that they can move Bogosian. But again, he's been so banged up. Like, is he healthy? But will he play 5 games and then get hurt again? It's an expiring contract. Some people have suggested a swap of expiring contracts to Foley for Bogosian plus, maybe, possibly. I'm not sure. The money works for this team. So would I take Zach Bogosian? Yeah, but if Buffalo wants to retain half, I don't think they can because the cap situation is tough as well. So I think they could move. He could be helpful for a team. It's just that his price tag, his health, those are concerns I have. And, Buffalo, look, you never have enough defensemen. If one of their other defensemen gets hurt, you might have to plug into the lineup. So I'd be careful if I was Botterill and moving Bogosian just because he had a snit and he wanted to get traded because he's not playing. I'm not buying that. And Galchenyuk, geez, I don't know. You'd really have to have full faith in that player coming to your team and thinking he could produce given the last couple of seasons he's had.
No, I could definitely see that. I think one of the underrated trade chips in this entire league, with the emergence of Igor Shesterkin in the minor leagues for the New York Rangers, you have Alexander Georgiev, depending on how you pronounce it. I think the Rangers are sneakily moving up in the standings. They have more RWs than our Flyers, and they might be able to get quite a nice return for that player. What do you think?
For which player?
Alexander Georgiev.
New York? Yeah. I guess it depends. Look, guys, with respect to trading players, you establish a price, and then if you get it, you take the deal, right? Could they? Yeah. But, I mean, I'll put it to you. What would you want back for that player? First round pick, a second round pick? I'm not sure, to be honest with you. So yeah, they have surplus. King Henrik's not going anywhere. So could they move him? Yeah, I think that I would be. I think a Georgiev trade in season is really iffy. I think where you see that move, to be honest with you, would be at the draft table in Montreal. I think that's where you see it, because if this prospect is going to move up and come across, King Henrik's not going anywhere, that would be the move. Because I think this trade, plus you'd need the team that was a contender at the trade deadline to take that player on. And unless there's an injury here, or maybe it's San Jose, but then what do you do with the two other goalies?
You just said it. Because I'm thinking the Sharks, and like I said, Shesterkin is really knocking it out of the park in Hartford. He comes up. Georgiev is .923 save percentage in 15 games. He's looked good. And if I'm San Jose, and I'm kind of swinging for the fences as it is, that's kind of what I'm thinking, what I'm leaning towards.
Well, yeah, but then have you looked at Martin Jones's contract lately, bud?
Well, who's the other? Who's the other guy who's not playing well there? Dell.
But Dell's unrestricted at the end of the year, so just how would you have to? I mean, you could probably do it, because Georgiev's on he's on an entry-level deal. He's an arbitration-eligible free agent. Yeah, it could work. That could work. So yeah, that could absolutely work. And the question is, do Rangers want to do it? And look, I'd hold the guy hostage. And I'd hold Doug Wilson for hostage. I want a first-round pick and a prospect back for that goaltender.
Oh yeah. I'm
not sure they would get that. I'm not sure they have that, to be honest with you. You have to look at San Jose. To be honest with you, they even have that from the Evander Kane trade.
Yeah, that's a good thought. And, I'd have to looking at them right now. No, they don't have a first. It'd have to be a 2021, or they'd have to take a prospect in the system of San Jose.
But a fair point, because you could take that player on because he's an entry level. And even in arbitration, he's going to get probably 2.5 or something like that. He's not going to go big on you. So, that's absolutely an option for San Jose at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean, Martin Jones just falling on his face, like you guys were talking about over the weekend. It's enough already. It's not going to turn around.
Unless the guy who won Game 6 in Vegas for them materializes again. You're talking two players with sub-900 save percentages. Just doesn't work in this league. And that's the one thing, is that what do you do here? You can't buy him now. He's got 4 more years at 5.75 cap hit. Like, that's a long, long buyout. You can't do that. So, I mean, what you would have to do is bring Georgiev in, or a player like that, maybe, and then, hopefully in 2 summers from now, you get Seattle to take Martin Jones. But yeah, he's really, really fallen down. And guys, not only that, it's like, I like early in the season, I watched the Kings play like night in, night out. And Jonathan Quick, he had terrible goals against him, terrible save percentage. But you watch a team in front of him who wasn't any good, and he really wasn't that bad. Now you see over the last 10 or 15 games, he's played really well. Martin Jones, when I watch him play, he's a bad goalie. He's not stopping shots that he should. That's the difference when you look at percentages and save percentages and goals against. I always go back and say and it really sounds like I'm an old man right now. You got to watch the games. Like when I watch San Jose play and I watch Martin Jones and Aaron Dell say, they are what their save percentages say they are. It's not because the team in front of them isn't any good or they're getting bad luck. They are not stopping shots that they should, and that's why Pete DeBoer's not there anymore, to be totally frank.
Yeah. Chef?
Well, that's true, because I got stuck with Martin Jones as my backup goalie in fantasy league, and he's absolutely shitting the bed for me. But that notwithstanding, but okay, so today Kovalchuk, as we call him in the Delaware Valley, was his stint with the Devils. He got waived today. So how happy are King fans about that, to get that out of there?
I don't think that. Look, I know let me talk to you about Kovalchuk, okay? The guy, I know some people say he's a cancer and all this other stuff. BS. He played hard, competed. The players loved him to a man. I mean, Kopitar, I sat with, I'm tight with Kopitar, right? He said, look, Dan, he's a very unconventional player, right? He's a rover, like in football. Like he doesn't, and when you try to put in structure like Tom McClellan has put in, it's not going to work, right? The guy who played 5 years ago is the same player this year? No. But on the face of it, what they tried to do is add to a 98-point team 2 seasons ago, and they signed Kovalchuk without giving up any assets. See, there are other, and people forget the big picture here. People forget that when they were looking at Kovalchuk, they were looking at a trade for Max Pacioretty or for Jeff Skinner, which could have cost them a first-round pick, which might have been Turcotte, could have been Beyond Foot. So on the balance of it, did they take a hit? Yeah. The fans, no, I think there's a faction of fans that would have liked to see them play. I would have liked to see them play. You know, when I watch a 28th ranked power play every night, and I've got Adrian Kempe on there who's got 3 goals and playing on the first power play unit, like my suggestion was, and I wrote it for fourth period, is play Kovalchuk 10 minutes a night. Like, put him on every power play and put him in selected situations where he's set up to win. Like at the end of a period, offensive zones face-off, or the fourth line's out there, you throw him out there. They could have done that, but the decision was made to go with the younger players. Kempe, who as I mentioned, Austin Wagner, Matt Luff, and they just were cutting bait. They just, they just knew the time was going to come where he was going to get his bonus payment. It wasn't working out. A trade would have been preferable, and maybe with a team with more structure and a better team, it might have worked. But there were no takers, so he walked away from the contract. They terminated him. They put him on conditional waivers. And I don't think the fans are upset, because in talking to the players, I think this player was committed. He just not a fit for a 2019 NHL team anymore. I think that's the issue. So they took a risk. It didn't work. But I don't think the fans are upset about it, because I don't think, like when I saw the player out there and he traveled with the team, he was a good soldier. When he got scratched, he was in the press box. He wasn't home in Beverly Hills. So he did all the right things when he was on the team. Nobody ever said anything poorly about him. So I don't think the fans are like upset or pissed off about him, to be honest with you. I don't think they're glad. I think they're glad because they're moving on from a situation that was inertia, right? You can't have this guy, who's a legend in this league, sitting in the press box every night. It's not good for him. It's not good for the organization. They cut ties. He'll go back to Russia. He'll probably get a couple million above the table and probably a couple million below the table at the KHL, the way they work over there. And he'll be happy to go play. I do think he's never coming. Like, this is not going to be a Yager situation where he goes back there, he scores a bunch of goals, and then comes back. I think the last game he's played in the NHL has been as a King. I'd be shocked if he came back again. But I don't think anybody's mad at him. I think it was a risk. I think people are more upset with Blake than anybody else. And again, as I mentioned previously, I'm not going to hang him for one bad UFA decision. So I think it's unfortunate. I think there's a faction of fans I would have liked to see him play. But now you got to move on, right? And again, this team is in a rebuild. And look, the first season was the season they thought they were going to compete again, and that was it. This season, it doesn't make any sense. I get it. I understand why they scratched him. But now you have to move on from him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Anthony.
So, DB, this is a Flyers podcast, so we got to do a full circle here. So one guy who's come up a lot in Flyer Dome is James Van Riemsdyk. 30 years old, has 3 years beyond this year at $7 million a year. I've looked into, his contract, and his most comparable players right now are Evander Kane and Max Pacioretty. And obviously he isn't producing nearly as much as they are. He's on pace for about 20 goals and 41 assists. So I've always viewed Van Riemsdyk as a perfect complement to a line. He found his niche in Toronto alongside Bozak and Kessel, later on with Bozak and Marner. If the Flyers were to move on from him, do you think there'd be a decent market for him on the trade front? Or do you think they could hang on to him and turn it around?
Didn't this guy score 27 goals in 66 games last year? For the Flyers. Didn't he? Is that the same guy? Like, you got to be look, do you want to retain half the salary and give it to him a team for $3.5 million? Maybe. Like, I think you got to have patience. Because you know what? I really love this coach. I think he's done great things there. I think you got to be a little bit more patient with JVR. This is not some bum. This is a guy who's going to score you 25 to 35 goals in a season still, I think. I don't think he's done. Right? He's not 35 years old. Right? He's not Ilya Kovalchuk, right? I mean, so I think fans have a little bit more patience here. Maybe it's a subpar season, but look, even if it's a subpar season, could he bounce back next season and get you 30 goals? Yeah, because the type of players. He's not fast. He stands in front of the net and cleans up garbage, and that's how he scores goals. That's what he does, right? Is it a crappy start? Yeah, but I don't think it's put back-to-back 15-goal seasons together, and then you got a problem in the following season. But one season, and they're still in contention, and he's one of those guys who can get hot. So if he scores, 5 goals in his next 6 games, and then he's got 13 goals in 38 games, then what do you got? You got a 20-goal score, 25-goal score. Is it pricey for it? Yeah, of course it is. Like, is it overpayment right now? Yeah, but to get rid of him, like to another team, you're going to have to retain at least $2 million on the contract. I don't see it happening. And again, because he's 30, give me the taker, give me the team. And why would you want to trade a proven goal scorer over this team that's all banged up right now? So I don't think I know this player. I like him a lot. I think the fans have to have a little bit more faith in him. Does it look bad right now? Yeah. And is it a fair criticism of the contract? Of course it is. But again, given the fact this is a proven goal scorer in a league where it's always hard to score goals, and with the injuries you got, and now a suspension with Farabee, I think you just got to be patient with JVR. I think when we get to the game 82, I think it'll be close to. I think it'll be over 20 goals, and it'll probably be close to what he, put up. Not, maybe a little bit underneath what that season was, but I don't think he's going to be a 12-goal scorer in Philadelphia this year.
No, I think that what the bad look is for him, he's been playing on the fourth line. Right. Up until the rash of injuries, he really couldn't find a higher spot in the lineup. And, of course, he's had a couple goals in the last couple of games, so it makes it look better on a goals-per-game basis. But he really has been invisible until very recently. So, but you're right. I mean, at least you can reach back. He's 30, and he's done it. He's going to, his shooting percentage is starting to climb now. He's got a couple goals, but he was like 9%. His career is like 12%.
He hasn't hurt the team defensively either. He's a +4, so he's not. Look, you want him to finish? Yeah, of course you do. Is he on the fourth line? Yeah, sure. Okay, because that's AV being AV, and he's going to play around with he's just coming and he's trying to establish protocol and structure and things of that nature. Right. But he hasn't hurt the team. I think they're losing games because of JVR, right? I mean, so it's just they've gone through a rash of injuries here. They played some tough teams. That game in Winnipeg last night, you can't go in a box against Winnipeg. You're dead. It's over. Don't do that, please. Don't do it. And they got hit last night. So I just think on a player like a proven player like that, I think you just got to have a little bit more patience because like you mentioned, he's going to get hot at some point in time, and then the numbers are going to look better.
You know what the problem is, DB? It's like you mentioned it earlier with Anaheim. The Flyers have a couple players in Farabee who just got suspended for 3 games. Great timing, kid. And, of course, Morgan Frost, who really aren't quite ready for the NHL. I mean, Farabee, I think, can get by. Okay, Frost, I think, is almost being hurt by the experience, but, it's exigent circumstances. Right. Given there's a trade freeze Thursday to next Friday, the 27th, but are the Flyers going to try and maybe supplement? Maybe Shane Gostisbehere is a trade chip now finally, and they could get some forward help in there. Because yesterday they had a lineup that had probably half the forwards were non-NHL quality, in my humble opinion. Right.
Nah, you get to trade Gostisbehere right now. If you get a great asking price for him, I think you're good. Again, if Chuck has established a price for the player and then you want talent back, is Shane going to get it from you? Yeah, because forever he's going to be tied to Montreal, right? Left side defenseman, playing with Shea Weber. Maybe you get back a Paul Byron or somebody that's going to be useful. I just don't, I don't see a lot of trades happening before the roster freeze.
Oh, no, not before.
Yeah, I don't think we're that deep in, and GMs are still trying to figure out what they have. So, but to be honest with you, like, their offensive issues are look, they're not New Jersey, Detroit, or Columbus, right? I mean, they've scored 2 less goals than the Rangers, and the Rangers got Kakko and Zibanejad and Breadman. So it's not like I like the way the team's playing. They're really good at home. They go through a tough stretch here. So I think if Chuck's going to add, could you use him as the chip Gostisbehere? Yeah, that would be the chip that you would use. Would it be for offensive help? Yeah. But again, let's talk about the guy we just talked about. If JVR gets hot and then he becomes on the second or third line left winger who's going to score 25 goals, that's a pretty good lineup. right? So again, I think you get through these rest of injuries. The suspension doesn't help you, and then so we're doing this podcast at like the probably one of the valleys of the season, right? On the road, tough games. So I just think you got to have a little bit more patience here. They're going to be in the mix, right? I mean, you're ahead of Toronto, Tampa Bay, and Florida. So look, coming into the season, it's about your expectations. What are your expectations for this team? To me, I call them a cusp team. They were 7, 8, 9, 10 team in the East, right? Are they there right now? Yep. Are they going to be there 50 games? Yep. Are they going to be there at the trade line? Yep. They're not, so that's what we get. Are they better than Washington, the Islanders, or Carolina? Nope. So that's what you have. So I would make a trade, but again, it's cost, guys. It's like cost is better come back for a forward. Yeah, that makes sense because you have depth on the blue line that you can make up for that loss. I just think you have a little bit more patience. See where you are at game 50 as you're getting into February 1st, a couple of weeks before the deadline, and then you got to pull a trigger because your team is still struggling offensively. Fine, but if you get healthy, if a guy like JVR produces, you may not have to have that. You may want to go trade him for a pick as opposed to a player.
Right. I love it. Yeah, and there's also the X factor of Nolan Patrick, and
right.
If he dropped in the lineup, that would really help to some degree offset what happened with Oskar Lindblom. Lindblom was like their third or fourth best forward.
Look, the team's taking a lot of hits here.
Yeah.
The Oskar thing, Farabee gets suspended. Guys are hurt. I mean, it's tough right now. It's one of the valleys that connect these animals. It's a valley, right? And then, so what do you have to do now? Because of the part of the game that's effective, you got to lean on the Provorovs, the Niskanens, and the goaltending. That's what you got to hang your hat on right now. You need to be really tight defensively to manage this valley until these players come back, and obviously Oscar's not going to come back, but the rest, Konechny and Farabee comes back. That's what you need, and Nolan Patrick. So it's like I know you go through a 3-game losing streak, you want to trade everybody and fire. I mean, it's just not going to happen. You got to be more patient here because there is quality on this team. When they're totally healthy, are they a wild card team? Yeah, they can be if the goaltending stands up. But at this time, let's be more positive. Let's talk about the great season Provorov's had and how Matt Niskanen is always going to be underrated, right? I mean, that to me, that's a success story of this team. And plus AV, I knew, people said retread, all this other shit. I knew when he come in there that they would be a better team. And I know Gordon did some good things while here. I knew that was the right guy. This is a proven coach. He probably would have got a job in Los Angeles if McClellan hadn't taken it because he was probably the second in line. But I just think that there's too many, even though they're in a valley right now, guys, there's too many positives around this team when I see that they've turned the corner. They've got prospects coming. They've got an emerging talent in Provorov who's going to be great. I like where this team sits, but you're going to have to leave patience because coming to the season, they weren't going to contend with the Bostons and the Washingtons in the world, right? They were going to be maybe another season or two. So, again, that's on the GM. What additions do you make? And, we could talk forever about Kevin Hayes, but I don't have that much time, to be honest with you. So, I think that's where you stand right now. You got to have a little bit more patience, but I like what they have. I love the coach, and I think the organization is in much better shape than it was 2 seasons ago, to be totally frank.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, it was a gut punch, and then you have about 4 other forwards go out at the same time, and that's the way it can work.
I know. Carson Tworinsky, whatever his name is. I know. I get it. It's tough right now, but it's a valley, and you got to. Look. This is not the NFL. This is not 16 games. This is an 82-game marathon where players get hurt all the time. So I think you just got to have patience right now. So any moves that are going to come, right? They're not going to come now. They're going to come in February. So, but I just think you just got look, and some players have to play better. But I do like what the organization has to offer right now, and I think they're going to be dangerous going forward because as the blue line matures more, as these younger players come up, the forward wall comes up, I think they're going to contend at this point.
I think that's the steady hand of Dennis Bernstein from the fourthperiod.com. DB, I really appreciate you joining us tonight. You're in so many places. Why don't you give the people your contact information?
And I will say this with respect to the Flyer season. If they're playing games of consequence in March and April, you want to sign for that right now. If they're in the race at that point in time, that's what you're signing for because frankly, the last couple of seasons haven't been that good. So I think if a Flyers fans, that's what you got to hang your hat up. And I do believe that they'll play important games late in the season. With respect to me, thefourthperiod.com, Kings of the Podcast, if you want some LA King stuff, although we do some lifestyle stuff with some music celebrities and things of that nature. And then the Hot Stove on SiriusXM in the East will be 11 to 1 Eastern every Saturday. And I think that's all I'm doing at this point in time. I don't think I have anything else I can really manage in my life with respect to everything else. But you can find us at those outlets. So I appreciate the support. You guys have done a great job on this podcast. So I'm happy to come and join you every so often to talk Flyers in the NHL.
Absolutely. Dennis, so much thanks again for joining us. And until next time, probably right around a trade deadline will be crazy.
For sure. Absolutely. Hey, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. You got it. Take care.
Bye.
Okay. Well, Dan, there was a lot that DB had to say, and maybe your take on, with what he said about the Flyers, I guess, is most germane to what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I think he was pretty spot on. When the team is healthy, and obviously they're going through all kinds of stuff with injuries and suspensions right now. But, even without Lindblom and Patrick, when this team is at full health, there is enough talent here to keep them afloat. I think he's right. I think this is a wild card team, a bubble team as they have been. I think they're a couple pieces away from being true contenders, but like you said, if this team is playing meaningful hockey in March, it is a step forward from years past. So baby steps. And if once everything gets healthy and the ship kind of starts to right itself again, I think we'll be a lot more positive with the direction of the future.
Yeah. Yeah. We thought they were a bubble team coming in. They probably earned a little bit more than that over the first part of the season. Anthony, that's when the 3-game losing streak is not what I think throws most of the fan base. First is the gut punch of Oskar, and then this rash of 4 or 5 other players out.
Yeah, for me, it was more like I brought up the JVR thing with Dennis, and he explained it pretty well. He kind of put into perspective that JVR always finds a way to score goals. And, I've always thought that JVR will score his goals. I just think that the Flyers need him to be more than that, and maybe that's an unfair ask. And I think that's where my personal concern, I think Dan echoes this too, is that the Flyers they lack that star power up front. Even when they were winning and they went on that 12-3-4 run from the beginning of November into early December, they were winning, but it was always by committee. It was never one guy taking the torch and blasting away 2 or 3 goals every 4 games or so. And I think that even when fully healthy, that's what this team lacks. And I fear that given how well their depth has been this year and how great depth guys have played like Pitlick and Niskanen and Braun and Lawton even, I feel like if they were to stand pat and just bank on JVR trying to turn it around and wait for him to get his 25 goals or trying to hope that Voracek gets on his saddle and gets going, I just feel like it's going to be a missed opportunity. And even when the Flyers are fully healthy, yeah, they're a playoff team, but they lack a star up front, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it's just a matter of whether they can address that this year, whether they're going to be out-leveraged because teams can see, where they're at and the kind of stable young talent they have, which other teams might want as return for the player the Flyers seek. Chef, the World Junior Championships begins on the 26th, the day after Christmas. And the gold medal game is on January the 5th. And some of the top Flyer prospects supposed to be there are, for the United States, Cam York. It's probably their top prospect, not in the pros right now. Bobby Brink. And Adam Ginning with Sweden, one of the defensive defenseman, good skater. Maybe not impressed with other areas of his game. And Igor Zamula for Russia is a possibility there. So that between Christmas and New Year's and a little bit after New Year's, there'll be some more hockey even when the Flyers have a bit of a break.
Yeah, it'll be fun to get a more refined look at them. I mean, everything I ever see of the prospects, I guess, are little clips here and there, especially Bobby Brink when he scores something. It seems to be all over the internet. But
Yeah.
I did see Zamula when he came to rookie camp 2 years ago when I think Hexie brought him in.
Yeah, the first time. Yeah.
I got to see him. Yeah, he was one of the, in my notes. I remember that he stood out. He sounded he skated pretty well, and I don't know why I wrote it down. I was like, this guy is standing out. He seemed to be everywhere every time I looked. So that was good. So I'm looking forward to actually seeing the next group of kids that hopefully will be hitting the team maybe 2-3 years from now. From what Dennis was talking about with JVR, it's interesting to hear somebody who's not like emotionally invested in the team like we are and like the fans are, to give his perspective on JVR. Like, it was kind of like, to him, it was like kind of almost ridiculous of us to be sitting there talking about giving up on a player already when we're not even at the 50 game mark. So I thought that was kind of an interesting take.
Yeah, no, I could see that. He's just starting to chip away. But DB hasn't had to watch him on the fourth line all year, Dan. So that's where I think we're coming from in that regard.
Because like I've been like riding JVR for quite a while now, and I've never questioned that he's going to find a way to score goals. You know, I said earlier today on Twitter, he always is a guy who's kind of like the perfect complement to a line. But like his 5 most comparable players, contract-wise, are Pacioretty, Evander Kane, Matt Zuccarello, Patrick Hornquist, and James Neal. And all of those guys are averaging more goals and more points this year than JVR, except for Zuccarello. Zuccarello's on pace to score less than a goal than JVR, but almost 10 points more. So the point is that, and he makes $1 million less more on the cap at $6 million. So I think the big thing with JVR is that you're getting paid the 4th most amount of money on the team up front. You're supposed to be a guy to score goals, get to the dirty areas, and like he's had chances this year. The analytics crowd have been, beating that drum for a long time, and I could say myself he's gotten some looks in front of the net, which is supposed to be his bread and butter, but he's not doing it. And if you can't live up to a $7 million a year AAV, that's going to hurt this team. And we're seeing it now that when those depth guys aren't there, he's not able to pull his weight and be able to fill the void.
Yeah, no, I definitely see that. So we'll just have to see how that turns out. And I think the Flyers, after the trade freeze, could go for like a middling NHL forward and a minor trade just to get some NHL talent on there, someone who plays a good two-way game. And like TV said, they might want to concentrate strictly on really reducing their goals against. Because, like the Islanders did last year and Arizona this year, you can win a lot of games that way. And until they get healthy, that's probably a good idea to emphasize that. Okay, well, gents, just the last thing here is that the Flyers play tomorrow night against Anaheim at home, then on Thursday against Buffalo before they travel to Ottawa and play those pesky Sens on Saturday night. Then they come back on Monday the 23rd to play the Rangers, and they have several days off, and I'm not sure when we'll be back to join you on the O&B Puckcast. So, Dan, why don't you tell the folks the information they need to know about Brotherly Pod, National Pod, all that good stuff?
Well, I'm at Dan the Flyer fan, at Brotherly Puck, at Brotherly_Pod, at National Pod Net. The Angry Negative Show is split to its own brand, at Angry Negative on Twitter. All the links are up there for the new platforms, the Apple, Google Podcast, Spotify links. We will be switching over to that, the first episode of 2020 in 2 weeks, and I'll be back on Wednesday night with a 2-hour Christmas special with Angry Jim.
Excellent. Great to hear it. Chef, you're at Steam Pub. Where can people find you on Twitter?
You can find me on Twitter at Chef to the Left B, and you can find me at Steam Pub, especially during this busy Hollywood holiday season. We'll treat you like a Hollywood star, though, but food's great, drinks are great. Come in and say hi.
All right, you got it. And, of course, from thefourthperiod.com. Anthony DeMarco, where can people contact you and read your stuff?
You can contact me at ADeMarco25, and you can read my stuff at the Fourth Period.
I'm Isaiah on Twitter at Isaiah, ISAIAH _520. And if you could subscribe to the O&B Puckcast on various platforms, particularly Apple Podcast, and if you could give us that 5-star rating, hopefully we're earning that. The subscriptions really do help move us up the charts. I don't know if we're going to be back before Christmas. I'm not sure. So we would like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy Hanukkah until the next time, and hope the Flyers can get through this tough period that they're going through. Let's keep our fingers crossed. And, of course, we'll always have Oskar Lindblom in our hearts. With that, everybody, good night.